Hiya, Barbie.
Hi, Ken.
You want to go do a podcast?
Sure.
Jump in.
Ladies and gentlemen, Barbies and Kens, Kellys of all ages, and everyone else, welcome to Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast. I'm your host, Jay. Now, usually I would have my co-host here, but he has something with work, so instead I have three wonderful guests here filling his shoes. So let's go around the table and everyone introduce yourself.
I'm Bethany.
I'm Emma. And I'm Katie.
So we're here to talk about the 13th animated Barbie movie, Barbie and the Diamond Castle. Before we dive in, I like to start with an icebreaker question, which is, what is your Barbie history? Did you have any dolls? Did you watch any of the movies? Anything like that?
Bethany, you want to start?
Yeah, I can start. So I have a pretty extensive Barbie history. I had several Barbie dolls when I was younger, and I have an older sister, but she was very much a tomboy, and so I would always play with them by myself or with my neighbor. And yeah, I don't even remember like what kinds of stories I would do with them, but they were just like around, you dress them up, and like it was a lot of fun. We also I can't remember if it was we had these DVDs or I just watched them so much from the library that it was basically the case that we had these DVDs, but the three that I remember watching growing up were Swan Lake, the Fairytopia one, and Princess and the Pauper. And in fact, I was remembering today that I had this board game that was Barbie Swan Lake board game. Yeah, I don't even remember what kind of board game it was, but we lost a lot of the pieces. So there was quite a bit of time in my childhood where that game was not playable, but it was definitely there. So a lot of Barbie things growing up.
Yeah, my history with Barbie is kind of almost the complete opposite of that. My mom was very, very against Barbie anything. So we were not allowed to have Barbie dolls. In fact, my older sisters, I think our grandma gave them Barbies one year for Christmas, and our mom took them away. Like they were not allowed to play with them. So I don't think I saw a Barbie movie until I was probably maybe 13, and I saw it because we had Barbie Swan Lake at the dance studio that I attended. And so that movie I've seen quite a few times because it would just be playing in the break room. And then since then, I've seen the Diamond Castle and the Princess and the Pauper.
I grew up playing with Barbies with my sister and my brother, and I did not see any of the Barbie movies except for Barbie: A Fashion Fairy Tale. For some reason, my sister got that one on DVD. Never saw any of the others. But I did get a backpack full of little Barbie chapter books, like soon after I had learned to read from some older friend who had outgrown Barbie chapter books at that point, but I read all of those and thought those were very cool.
So yeah, let's dive right into the Diamond Castle. Sounds like you're all pretty familiar with Barbie at this point. Maybe not to the same extent, but Diamond Castle was released on September 7th of 2008. It aired on Nickelodeon first, and the DVD release came on September 9th, and it was directed by Gino Nichelle. This is his first and only Barbie movie that he was a director on. But like a lot of the Barbie directors, he worked on a lot of other mainframe animation movies. So he was a director on some of the Hot Wheels movies and some of the Max Steel movies. And yeah, mainframe seems to rotate their directors between franchises. So even though you wouldn't necessarily think that the director of a Hot Wheels movie could jump onto a Barbie movie, it works out in the end. And this was written by our favorites on this podcast, Alana Lesser and Cliff Ruby. And unfortunately, this is their final Barbie film after an absolutely phenomenal run. They're kind of the people most responsible for this golden age of Barbie movies. They did Rapunzel, Swan Lake, Princess and the Pauper, Magic of Pegasus, 12 Dancing Princesses, Island Princess, and this one, Diamond Castle. So they're the writers that we sort of think of when we think of these great Barbie movies of this early era. They're the ones who cracked the formula earliest. After sort of the Nutcracker one was kind of so as we said in our episode, but then starting with Rapunzel, they really seemed to get the formula down. Um, so yeah, it's kind of sad to be saying goodbye to them, but yeah, hopefully there's more good writers coming down the line. And yeah, the music is once again by Arnie Roth. He's done a lot of these princess movie scores. And there's also a lot of this is a musical of sorts. There's a lot of original songs, and then there's also a translation of a Mexican pop song in here as well. So yeah, once again we have the framing narrative. This time it's Stacy, Barbie's sister Stacy. Who knows what happened to Kelly? Was she fired?
I think Barbie has multiple siblings, doesn't she?
She does.
She has Skipper and
Yeah.
Stacy and Kelly.
I'm not
And they're
sure.
just a family without any parents or anybody
Yeah,
else in there. They're just these four
And
sisters.
there's a dog.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not too familiar with that actually, so it's good that you brought it up. Yeah, I know Kelly's the only one we've seen so far in these Barbie movies. She's always been the one that the story's being told to, but this time it's Stacy who she's having trouble with her best friend. So Barbie tells her the story, as Barbie is wont to do, about Liana and Alexa, who are they start the movie, they're living the cottagecore lesbian dream, and this is actually sort of a foundational text to the cottagecore lesbian aesthetic. It's a lot of the sort of explosion of cottagecore, you can kind of trace it back to nostalgia for this movie and for these first maybe 20 minutes where Liana and Alexa are just kind of spending their days frolicking in the woods and growing flowers and living in this cottage and eating jam and bread.
Living the dream.
Dancing in their garden.
Yep. But then, of course, this is the movie, the plot has to kick in, and one day while they're walking into town, they come across an old lady, and Liana, out of the kindness of her heart, gives her a sandwich, and in return she receives this old mirror, which she washes off, and then she and Alexa are singing one day, and they hear singing coming from this mirror, and turns out that there's a lady stuck in this mirror named Melody, and she was the apprentice to the three muses of music in the Diamond Castle. And one of the muses got jealous of the other two, that's Lydia, and turned them into stone. So Melody has hid herself in this mirror and can't escape. So Liana and Alexa are, before they have time to do anything, Slider, Lydia's wyvern henchman, comes and burns down this cottage. And so Liana and Alexa agree to join Melody on this quest to find the Diamond Castle and stop Lydia. Along the way, they meet two dogs, some roguish men, a troll. They go to an old manor, and eventually Lydia captures Alexa and then Liana. And to save them, Melody promises to show Lydia how to reveal the Diamond Castle. And then they have to kind of all band together to defeat Lydia. Melody smashes her mirror to keep Lydia from finding the castle, and then Lydia disappears down a whirlpool of her own making, kind of explodes into magic light. We don't know what happened to her. And then, out of sort of desperate to find this way to save Melody, Liana and Alexa realize that the song that Melody taught them was the key to revealing this castle. They sing it, the castle emerges from the lake, Melody's fine, but oh no, Lydia, she's still around! Rides in on her dragon, and then Liana and Alexa use the power of friendship and the muse's instruments to defeat her once and for all. And Lydia turns to stone, and the muses are released, and they offer Alexa and Liana a place at the Diamond Castle, but Alexa and Liana refuse, and they go back home to live their cottagecore lesbian dream.
Yay!
So yeah, I mean, first thing to talk about is this Barbie movie is kind of revolutionary in that even though Liana and Alexa are referred to as friends throughout the movie, like, there's something more going on there. I don't think that's controversial to say. They're very close in almost a romantic way. And that's the most often interpretation of this movie, is that there's this romantic relationship between them, and even the two male love interests who show up, they're just kind of dumb. They don't do anything.
Yeah. Yeah, their relationship feels very established too. Like it
Mm-hmm.
definitely seems like they've been, living together like this, and that's just kind of how their friendship, their relationship has been for quite a while, and it's just feels very established and comfortable for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was one of the things I feel like wish there was more of, like some, I don't know, like explanation for like who they are, like how long have they known each other, and like how did they come to decide to live in a cottage together and grow flowers, and like I don't know, like and they sing and they're obviously very talented, but like yeah, how did they decide to live that specific life together?
We need a prequel.
We do.
Yeah.
I feel like this whole story feels to me less like a story that would be written for something like a movie and more like what it felt like to play with Barbies with my sister. That, like, let's pretend our Barbies are best friends and let's live in a cottage and then let's go on an adventure and find two puppies in a field of flowers and, like, get, maybe a little bit hungry or something, but never have anything actually that bad happen on this journey. And that, like, there's and maybe like there's some boys somewhere, but they don't matter that much, and really we're the ones who want to save the day, and so we'll go off and save the day and they'll do whatever, and we'll have some sort of generic shallow mean girl as the bad guy, and eventually we'll live happily ever after, and it doesn't really matter like how we got here or whether this is a like realistic story or whatever. We're just two kids playing with Barbies and they're best friends and they can sing amazingly well and do all of these fun things that we would want to do.
That's a really good point. Yeah, yeah. And I feel like I had a very basic thought that was related to that, where I was thinking like, oh my gosh, like I can remember being like 8 years old, and if I came across two puppies, I would absolutely want to name them Sparkles and Lily. Like those are the two names that probably would have come first to mind. And so
And see, 8-year-old me, I think still thinks Sparkles is as dumb a name as current me thinks it is, but
it is kind of dumb, but it's like in a fun way. I don't know.
Okay.
So, but yeah, it really does feel like you're playing. Yeah, you're right. Like it doesn't need to be a whole thing. It's just like this fun way to imagine a story. Yeah.
And that's an interesting observation because this is, unlike a lot of these Barbie movies, this isn't based on anything.
right.
Even something like Barbie and the Island Princess takes a lot of inspiration from Tarzan, even though it's not a direct adaptation. Whereas this one, it's like, I don't know, I almost thought of it as a D&D campaign, which is probably the adult version of Played with Your Barbies, where it's like, yeah, the world and the story are kind of fit to these characters rather than the other way around. Yeah, I think the first 20 minutes of this movie are maybe my favorite 20 minutes of any of the Barbie movies I've seen.
Wow.
Just kind of this, like, again, the cottagecore lifestyle of just these two people living together.
Just being cute and idyllic.
Yeah.
What's funny is like even though this is like really idyllic, like as somebody who's like worked on farms, I did think it was pretty realistic that they were very poor. Because you don't make a lot of money farming, especially farming flowers.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, that is kind of the interesting part, is like there's a lot of focus on their sort of economic status, and then also this idea of hunger that shows up later on in the story that aren't necessarily things you would think of in the fantasy story. But they play a very big role here with the characters and their motivations. Yeah, it's, again, those first 20 minutes for me were really good. There's this like storm that comes in and that adds a little bit of drama, but it's just like we're just seeing these characters live their lives. And then the moment that Melody shows up, I think the film goes down just a little bit for me. Where it's like, okay, now we have this adventure, and obviously we have to go on this adventure. But I don't know, I found it less compelling than say, Magic of Pegasus, where Magic of Pegasus, each episode of the adventure feels exciting and new, whereas here it's like, oh, they come across the troll and they solve the troll's riddle and they fly off on a magic rainbow bridge. And yeah, it never grabbed me in that same way that the first 20 minutes did.
Hmm. And I wonder if maybe part of that is that it feels like there's, in a way, a bit less personal stake for the main characters in this because kind of their main motivation is just helping Melody. And obviously, the reason they're helping her too is because if they don't, then what's her name? Lydia will like take over the world and then everyone will be living in this sad dark world of hers that she's envisioning or whatever. But like aside from that, it's kind of like what you're saying. They just sort of leave their cottage life behind and then go off on these adventures, and it feels like there's less personal connection for them at that point.
Though their house does burn down,
It does.
so
True.
they
Yeah.
need to go somewhere.
Yeah.
And I think along those lines, my favorite part of the adventure is this old manor that they come to where they are told by the servants that they were the prophesized people who would come eventually and live in the manor. And it's everything that Alexa at the start of the movie says she wants. It's more food than they can eat, more rooms than they can explore, more dresses than they can wear. And it breaks this friendship or relationship that the two of them have, that like they meet this barrier that they can't surpass, at least initially. And you get the sense that like this fight, they would eventually have worked it out if Lydia hadn't shown up. But that's the most personal that the stakes get, I think, where it's just very like putting them, just the two of them, they're the conflict. There isn't any of this external, Lydia's gonna end music. It's just very interpersonal. Yeah, I kind of wish there had been more of that throughout the rest of the movie.
Right. It's a pretty small bit of the movie, especially considering that with the framing narrative, that's like the point of it, that Barbie is telling Stacy about it because of that, to help Stacy work this out with her friend.
Yeah.
And I don't really know why they chose to put the framing narrative there at all. I feel like you could do the story without it, and that you don't need to have that explicit moral there. But
yeah, and this is
whatever.
we had a lot of Barbie movies without the framing narrative, starting with Princess and the Pauper, and then the last movie, Mariposa, had a framing narrative. Now this one does, and spoiler alert for next week's episode, the next movie does as well. So I find it kind of interesting, yeah, that, like you said, that it doesn't need to be there, and that it maybe doesn't quite connect to the rest of the story of like this search for the Diamond Castle, which is kind of just an excuse to get them on the road. Yeah, the stakes are vague here, and I think that's maybe an issue. Sort of the end of music.
Right. Yeah, who knows what that means.
Yeah. It's just kind of like, and some of these Barbie movies have had like very specific stakes.
Well, I'm thinking like the end of music, if it's like anything like that bar scene, like if there's no music, then people
Then everybody gets really mad and
everybody's gonna get
throws
really
mashed potatoes at each other.
yeah, like everybody's gonna start throwing food and so
Lydia might change her mind real quick. That'll get rid of music idea if that starts happening.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not as well established as, Magic of Pegasus is maybe the closest to this movie, even though it's a very different movie fundamentally. But in that one, it's like, okay, Barbie's entire village and parents have been frozen and they will die in 3 days. And so she has to, assemble this magic wand to save them. Whereas here it's like, the end of music. What does that look like? Who knows?
Yeah.
And yeah, it for me at least, and feel free to disagree with me on this, but for me at least, I didn't feel that connection throughout the whole story.
It certainly feels more like the point is for them to be on this journey and to do things with their friends and have just enough overarching conflict to justify the journey, but that it isn't actually strong enough to be this really driving narrative. It's just like, oh yeah, we need something to have something to justify the existence of this journey.
Yeah, it's not character driven; it's plot driven.
Mm-hmm.
To use maybe more fancy terms there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, the various episodes on the adventure, if they were more compelling in and of themselves, I think I would like it more. But I like the scene where they're at this pub or tavern or whatever it is, and they're, singing for their food. I like that element of, but I don't know, that scene, maybe because of the weird dancing puppies, never really landed for me. And yeah, then the troll is like, it's a troll. Oh, and before that, it's Lydia and Slider show up in the woods, and then they get rescued by the men in a way that, like, a lot of these Barbie movies have been sort of challenging that idea of
Mm-hmm.
the prince rescues the princess, but then in this one, it's like the men rescue the women, and that's kind of, and obviously it later kind of reverses that, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. I think another part of it is I just don't like the male quote unquote love interest that they introduce.
Mm-hmm.
Though I feel like they also do a lot of, well, the puppies specifically like roll their eyes a lot at
Yeah.
the male characters, but like the Liana and Alexa are kind of dismissive of it as well. And again, it sort of feels to me being being a kid, like in, I don't know, third grade or something. That was like some boy who like kind of said he liked me or something, and I was like, yeah, whatever. Like, you're my friend, I'll still play with you sometimes, but mostly I'm just gonna play with my own friends and ignore you. And
Yeah.
it felt kind of like that dynamic.
Okay. Yeah.
Something I thought was interesting, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, but the fact that the, quote unquote, I guess these guys are like identical twins kind of felt like, like we don't really want to make like love interests for both of these characters, and so we'll just like make one person and split him in two.
Saves us some time.
Yeah.
I would assume so, especially like budgetary reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, like they knew they weren't going to develop those characters any further than they did, so
Yeah.
they just left it at that. No, I agree. Like I didn't really like their characters at all and was quite relieved when they got left behind at the Rainbow Bridge scene of just like, yep, this is a good place for you to exit the story. They did come back later, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I will say I really did enjoy their guitar picking skills.
Yeah, there was some. We can talk about that when we get to the music
Yeah.
section.
Yeah, it's definitely like, and there were similar, the love interest in Magic of Pegasus, which the more I think about this movie is kind of taking elements of that, but the love interest in Magic of Pegasus is this sort of roguish man, but what makes him special is that there's something underneath that, a sort of like a kindness that he's buried away out of like guilt.
Hmm.
And I mean, I love that character and that movie so much because of that sort of complexity to the character. Whereas here it's like, yeah, they're just kind of the roguish men who show up and do things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think I wish they had chosen one or the other. Either let's develop these love interests as love interests throughout the movie, or let's just cut them out entirely and focus on the central relationship between Liana and Alexa.
Mm-hmm.
Because, and that's the core of the movie, and that's, again, the part I find most interesting. And that's why I think those first 20 minutes, when it's just them
Mm-hmm.
living their life, trying to solve their problems, that was where I found it the most compelling.
I wanted to just talk about kind of the climax of the movie a little bit because I think I still have a lot of questions about what happened to Lydia. Like she just kind of disappears, but then she shows
She
up
disappears and then she comes back and then she gets turned to stone. And I
Yeah.
was totally expecting maybe a little bit of like redemption or something there.
again.
If not for her, then at least for Slider. But
I
nope,
know.
both of them are just stone.
What a theory about where she went is maybe she went into the same kind of like weird magical realm where the castle was when it was invisible. invisible. And then when they made the
Oh.
castle reappear, she was taken out of that weird magical, like, kind
She
of
did
in
go into the
between.
water.
Yeah.
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 How did they bring Melody back? Is that when Melody comes back
Yeah,
too? When
that's
they reveal the
right.
castle?
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Okay.
So
Wow,
maybe it
my
doesn't
theory has
just
legs.
reveal the Diamond Castle, it reveals all the magically hidden things.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That might be the case. That's a better theory than I had. My theory was that they wanted a surprising moment at the end.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like your theory is giving them a little bit too
Yes.
much credit, and
Well,
so I kind of want to agree with Jay
Here's
here.
the thing, though. This is a lot of Lesser and Cliff Ruby we're talking about. We've seen how they could construct a very solid plot. So I'll give them the benefit of the doubt here.
Hmm.
Okay. I will take your word for it on their writing
Yeah.
skills, because I haven't
Perhaps
seen
I'm
any of their other movies.
overselling it a bit, but they have an attention to detail, which made me kind of wonder, like, that's an odd moment to just like have her show up again. But yeah, I think Bethany's explanation of it was better than I could have done.
And this is why we discuss these things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I also do really love how basically it came down to like a battle of the bands.
Yeah.
between, yeah, Lydia and then Alexa and Liana. So that was pretty great.
Is that the scene with all the key changes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the third act here is pretty solid, although the guys show up again and factor in more than they maybe need to. But yeah, as like a pure spectacle and fun thing, I think the third act serves its purpose.
I don't know if this would be in plot, but another note that I had that I thought was funny and maybe worth discussing was the fact that, and I can't remember, maybe I'm getting this name wrong, but I feel like in Fairytopia, like the evil realm is like looks the same as it does in this movie, like that weird like green kind of
Yeah,
misty place. There's like a bunch of caves, so like I thought that
yeah,
was interesting that they're using such a similar looking
Mm-hmm.
evil world.
yeah. For me, it reminded me most of, I guess, yeah, because there's that woods that they go through in Fairytopia that it's very similar to. For
Mhm.
me, it reminded me a lot of, again, Magic of Pegasus, the evil layer there,
Mm.
which is sort of this lots of rock spires. And yeah, I believe this is once again production designed by Walter P. Marthisius,
Mm.
who actually co-directed the first Fairytopia movie as well. But he's been the production designer for a lot of these, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's maybe drawing from similar inspiration for all of these different evil layers. A lot of these movies have green as the evil color, so
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel like there's a lot of classic evil lair styles and that like caves and green
Like the Grinch.
magicalness
yeah.
feel pretty standard.
Though the spiky stuff all over the place, that's cool. And the green
Mm.
lava.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's maybe an animation thought, but yeah, it's
Mhm.
worth bringing up. So yeah, overall I gave the story a 4 out of 5. I liked it. I think it could have been a lot better. I think the first 20 minutes though, really solid.
I give it a 3.5.
I also gave it a 3.5, and I think like I would say I enjoyed it overall, but there were just kind of a
Mhm.
few plot hole confusing moments maybe that didn't quite make it for me.
I gave it a 4. I think that watching it, imagining it being something that I would play, like this is a story I would play with my Barbies as a child, made me like it a lot more and see the story differently and in a better light than I would have otherwise.
Yeah, so next up we have the characters. So first on the list is Liana, who's sort of the Barbie character this time around. She's kind of the typical Barbie protagonist. They're always kind of from the Nutcracker, kind, clever, and brave.
Mm.
That
Yeah,
is
pretty
Mhm.
much.
Yep, sounds about right.
generally she's optimistic. I like the moment where she gives the sandwich to the old lady. That
Mhm.
sort of moment of kindness. And it's not even the old lady isn't even asking for it. They just pass her on the road. That's something I noticed rewatching it with you all was that it's not like inspired by anything. It's not something she's responding to. She's just like, oh, that lady looks hungry. Let me just hand
Mm-hmm.
over. Even though they are poor, they can only afford jam and bread, and they're going off to the village to sell their last flowers. It's yeah, I found it a touching moment. Overall, I think she's better with Alexa there.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
She's a good foil for Alexa, and I think Alexa is maybe the more interesting of the two.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I don't see a ton of character development of either of them, that they start out pretty, what was it you said, like clever, kind, and brave, and continue on that way. And it seems like they're really good friends, and they've been through a lot together, and then they have this little place where they disagree and go their separate ways, and then they come back together again. And that is sort of, they maybe think, oh, this might break our friendship, but it doesn't, and then it just becomes like one more thing that they're like, oh, we got through that. And it doesn't feel like it changes either of them a whole lot.
I might push back on that. I think for Alexa, because she starts the movie out with this desire for something more, and maybe she's happy but not content. And then I think the arc of the movie, or at least the intended arc of the movie, is Alexa learning to be content with Liana, which is part of why I
Yeah.
read this relationship as somewhat romantic. Is this sort of like it's this love story where they're like they've been together and they're learning to trust each other again. And this is often the case with these Barbie movies where when there are two major characters, the one who more visually resembles Barbie is the one who kind of stays kind, clever, and brave, and then the other character has the bigger arc and is maybe allowed a bit
Hmm.
more freedom to stray from that characterization. There's sort of this
Mm-hmm.
idea of who Barbie should be.
Hmm.
I don't know who exactly is passing this down, but like a Mattel idea of like Barbie should be this role model, so maybe we can't have her mess up too much. But then if you have a supporting character like Alexa, you can have those flaws kind of come in a little bit more.
It's like Jesus and the disciples.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, that's not a terrible example.
Yeah, I think this just speaks to my lack of experience with the Barbie movies, in that I think I one of the biggest things that I feel like I felt about Alexa and Liana was just how perfect they were, and it felt like they didn't really have many flaws, if any. But I think that's probably pretty typical for Barbie movies, yes. So,
Yeah, that's very much the case. There's occasionally they'll put in a few little character flaws,
hmm.
but usually it's the supporting characters who get the bigger arcs.
Hmm.
Which, yeah, Alexa, I mean, as a character, she has that sort of that kindness, that cleverness, and that bravery as well. But the contrast with Liana, that's where I think it is more interesting. And again, I'm saying this having seen a lot of these Barbie movies, so
Mm-hmm.
I could tell like pretty immediately, oh, this is how this Barbie character is different from the other Barbie characters.
Hmm.
Or at least I hope I can. What did you all think of Liana and Alexa's relationship in the movie? I know we've kind of touched on it quite a bit, but kind of specifically.
I don't know. I feel like
Yeah.
I was I thought it was, I don't know, some of the discussions they had I feel like were like nice ways of depicting like how like people should work things out together. I will say that like as somebody who's like familiar with the Barbie movies and I've heard about this one, everybody's like, "Oh, this is the gay one." And like as somebody who is gay, I was like, okay, it's like really like, "Oh, this is like piqued my interest." And I feel like obviously it's a children's movie and it's from 2008. So I was like, "Oh, they just seem like really good friends." I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it is the question is, how intentional is it? Because this is, as you said, it's 2008. This is, you know, if you look at where things were, this was when Barack Obama was still opposed to gay marriage.
Yeah.
Like, and these movies are, Mainframe Studios is a Canadian studio, and a lot of these talent are from Canada, where, you know, Canada is maybe a little bit more progressive on these things, but even still, this is also made for an American audience. And so, yeah, that is kind of the question here, is how intentional is this subtext? For me, I think I had the opposite way to it, where when I first saw this movie, that wasn't an interpretation that even was in my mind. And then I revisited again later and was like, oh, wait a second, there is like more to this relationship than just a friendship, or at least what I would imagine a friendship would look like. And obviously, friendships come in all different shapes and sizes. But I do almost feel like there's a little bit of intentionality there of having this queer couple in a Barbie movie, even if they can't say it. But then I do also see the opposite side, where it's like they don't say it, so you can't really.
Yeah, it's that, like, the fine line between, like, just kind of your, like, a typical maybe representation of, like, a really close female friendship, or is it like, no, like, they're a couple and they've been together for years. But yeah, I feel like the, you know, what do they say? Best friends today, tomorrow, and forever.
Yeah.
Like, that's pretty intense. And, you know, exchanging heartstone necklaces.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly the context of this, but when Alexa stays back at the manor or whatever, and then there's a scene where Liana is just like talking to Melody, kind of gushing about Alexa and like their friendship and how she's worried about her, something like that, and like to the point that she doesn't see Slider sneaking up on her, and it's like, all right, you're very preoccupied right now.
Yeah, and it is interesting. This isn't the first time we've had sort of hints at an LGBT couple in these movies. The last big one was in Barbie Island Princess, where we have Sagi and Azul, the red panda and the peacock, who are sort of the Barbie character's adoptive dads.
What?
Yeah, and they're
I know nothing about this
they
movie.
act
So.
like a married couple.
That's so cute.
And yeah, it's the kind of thing of like, I wouldn't be surprised if, again, Cliff Ruby and Alana Lesser, who wrote the Island Princess, are maybe trying to sneak something in as well. And especially because everything I've read about this movie online is about how significant this was for a lot of, especially young queer women, growing up and seeing this very close relationship and almost a romantic relationship, and maybe not realizing at the time that that's what they wanted, but then later revisiting it and realizing, oh, this is where like a thing people can relate to. And that's part of why I bring up the cottagecore lesbian aesthetic. This movie is kind of foundational to that as well. Yeah, I can't speak too much to that experience. This is just what I've seen online. It is also worth noting that at the end of the movie, Liana's dress mimics the colors of the lesbian flag, and,
Yeah.
and Alexa's dress mimics the colors of the bi flag.
That's right.
And they do fly off on a rainbow together.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
So, there's that.
Yeah, if this were made today the exact same way, it would be unavoidable to say, yes, it was intentional. I think the fact that it was in 2008 maybe puts a little bit of a question mark there.
I feel like I need to watch it again now. Because I feel like the first time, you know, like, I was just, like, trying to figure out, like, what the heck was going on, and now, yeah, I feel like I kind of want to, like, just kind of sit and, I don't know, pay more attention to that.
So next up we have Melody, who is trapped in a mirror. She's part of the, well, it was once, I guess, they're the throuple, the three muses, and then they bring on this fourth person, and then eventually the throuple kind of reshuffles a bit.
Yeah.
I wonder what their intention was in having an apprentice, because it seems like they're like immortal beings.
Right, so
Yeah.
And,
why,
like, were
why
they
would
hoping-
they need another one?
Yeah,
Are
were
they
they,
gonna
like-
be four muses of music now? Or
Or were they hoping
what?
to like overthrow Lydia and like replace her this whole time?
Or maybe
Like,
they were just gonna make Melody into a princess of music that they make.
Oh yeah,
They put crowns
oh,
on
that's
Liana
right.
and Alexa at the end
Mm.
and say, "We pronounce you princesses of music" or something. Just, because you got to put a crown on somebody at the end of a Barbie movie.
Mm-hmm.
yes.
And maybe that was what was going to happen to Melody. But they were like, no, actually, now we got an open spot. You can be a muse.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the idea of them planning on replacing Lydia, that maybe makes her a more sympathetic villain.
Yeah.
Mm.
But yeah, I don't know if there's an answer in the story for why. Yeah, as a character, she's fine.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is maybe a little bit infuriating that she can't stop herself from singing.
Yeah.
Though I give them the benefit of the doubt of like she's not a human exactly, so
Mm.
maybe there's some like nature to her that's just like
Mm.
she has to sing.
The power of music compels
Yeah.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Yeah. I did really appreciate the moment when her character is like, I would rather never escape from this mirror than give you the key to the Diamond Castle, and so she breaks the mirror.
Yeah.
Like, that felt like the kind of self-sacrifice that we don't quite see from anybody else, and I appreciated that.
Mm.
Yeah. It's a good moment for her character. Maybe the best moment in the movie for her character.
Mm-hmm.
This is only slightly related to her character, but is it assumed then in this world that playing music allows them to do anything? Because I think I was kind of like surprised when she threw herself into a mirror using her music.
Yeah,
Right.
it's magical. I think the flute itself was magical.
Mhm.
And then just her being a muse. Well, I guess Liana and Alexa play the music, and that's magic as well. And the Barbie movies have always been loose with the mechanics of magic, so it's not
Not high on
necessarily.
their priorities list.
Yeah. Next up, we have Jeremy and Ian. We talked a bit
Wait,
about
that's
them.
their
Yeah.
names?
Yes.
It's just like these are people I went to school with.
I'm telling you, this is just two third graders playing with their Barbies.
Yeah, they're the twins who are the quote unquote love interests by default.
Right. But only barely.
Yeah.
They're just like the same age. They're like moderately attractive.
They're
The
in
British
here-
accent.
Yeah.
I have a lot to say about that when we get to voice acting.
They're in here because you need a Ken.
Mhm.
Which is odd because some of these movies have actually not had like an explicit Ken character, a love interest character. But yeah, here it's like, well, we need to have our Ken character. And I wonder, this is part of what makes me wonder about the subtext. If it was a Mattel saw the script and was like, ooh, this people might start to question. Let's just kind of like, or maybe it was, the writers themselves being like, oh, let's avoid any suspicion here. Now I'm trying to think back, because usually when they have two female characters at the center of these who grow really close, they try and also have like a love interest for at least one of them.
Yeah, I do. It is interesting though that like with this one, even if that was kind of the intent to maybe like, pacify the heterosexuals, like it's still they don't get together with them in the end. Like they never turn into actual love interests. So
There's a lot of these Barbie movies end with a wedding. This one doesn't. This one doesn't even end with any indication that the love interests are going to stay in these ladies' lives.
Right.
They dance together, and
Right.
then the two of them fly away.
Like that they come in a couple times in the story, and then they are the people they dance with, and then that's kind of all we see of them.
And I feel like, again, like with the fact that they're like identical twins, and even like especially in the end, they're like wearing the same outfit, and it's like like this person like really does not matter. Like there's no weight given to that character, and I feel like that maybe is just another indication that it's not a serious thing at all. So
Right.
Yeah.
mostly the story is about
Mm-hmm.
these two female characters helping their friend, and then the guys are only in it barely on the side sometimes.
They do have, I will give them, they do have a certain roguish charm.
Mm-hmm. And their guitar picking skills.
Yeah.
And
hmm
they have horses, which is proven to be useful many times in the plot, right?
Yeah. Next up we have Lydia, who's the maybe a bit generic villain.
Yeah.
But she's
Pretty
got
generic.
great style.
She
Yeah.
does. Oh my gosh.
Good layer, good style.
Mm-hmm.
She can sing well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
She has one song that's
Right.
very short, but
It's a cool song,
But
though.
good.
Mm-hmm. She plays a mad flute.
yeah. Disappears herself into a whirlpool and then shows up again.
Iconic. Yeah, I love, like, I mean, just the first time she showed up, her style was just on point. But then I also love when they kind of do the little flashback scene and show her with the other muses, and like she is the
Still
goth.
got that
She is,
style.
she is the goth muse, and like, of course she had to be the villain because that's how she looks.
Right.
So much leather. It's great.
Maybe they were like, conspiring against her, like, oh, we gotta kick Lydia out because she doesn't want to wear the golden laurel leaves. Like,
Or she's upstaging us all
Yeah.
with her fashion choices.
I wish she had a more compelling motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Like even something as simple as like she thinks the muses are trying to get rid of her, even if that isn't the case. Though maybe that's a bit complex for
For a movie aimed at 8-year-olds,
yeah.
it might be.
I don't think so. I feel like the plot would have definitely been different because they would have needed some kind of redemption at the end if that were the case. Because that would have been so mean if like she thought that they were gonna like get rid of her and then they turn her into stone at the end. Like
Yeah.
Yeah, but even if she, I don't know. Well, she talks about wanting to be like to sing solo and be the only one making the music, but then it also talks about like she's gonna make this world without music, and so that's a little bit unclear. But even if she had wanted to like get rid of her competition or be the only one or make the world the way she wanted it, feels more interesting than I actually want to make the world dark and sad.
Yeah, I think she suffers from, again, this is a plot-driven movie and she's just there to drive the plot forward.
Yeah.
But yeah, that she reminds me a bit of Laverna from the Fairytopia movies of, she's kind of just the generic villain that's in the background, maybe not as memorable as some of the others, but not as unmemorable as some of the others as well. And her henchman is Slider, the wyvern.
is that like a species? Like what's
It's
a wyvern?
a wyvern is like a mythical being that's basically a dragon that doesn't breathe fire.
Okay.
Oh, is that the distinction between
I
them?
believe so. I mean, it's the kind of thing of like, because there's no single definition of what a dragon is. So.
Right, so it's just depending on what fantasy series you're currently
Yeah.
reading.
I always remembered him as having breathed fire because he burns down the cottage, but that's
It's an
entirely
accident.
accidental.
Right.
Yeah.
Knocks the
And
chair in the fire.
In fact, maybe I was like misinterpreting this, but it looked like that accident happens because he got like burned by the fire. Like I thought there was like a kind of a singeing sound, which if he's covered in scales, like
Exactly. I wondered why he was that sensitive
that
too.
seemed a little confusing to me, and yeah. But I think I'm reading into this a little too.
He wasn't like shiny in a way you would expect scales to be.
So maybe it wasn't scales.
Yeah,
Okay.
I wonder.
Could also
Or
be
like
scales.
thinner scales.
Uh-huh.
Like more like a snake than like a dragon.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Which he is very snake-like in his design.
Yeah.
I kept waiting for a redemption arc for him.
Same.
I thought he looked
He's too
kind of-
dopey.
cartoonish enough that I was like, he can't be a real bad guy. He's got to become a good guy at the end, right? Nope.
And it kind of felt like a situation where, I don't know, I don't think he had, I feel like he just didn't had a low enough level of intelligence that Lydia just took advantage of that. So it felt very much like Lydia was using him throughout the whole story, which is again why I was expecting maybe some kind of redemption for him where he breaks free from her influence. But
Is that one point in the story though where like he's like going to murder Alexa and
Liana?
Rihanna
Yeah.
by like throwing them in lava?
that's
Right.
He didn't think
He
twice
does.
about that. He wasn't like,
Right.
this is something Lydia wants me to do. He was just like, yeah, fine, I can finally like throw you guys in the pit of lava.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean I think he still should have had a redemption arc. He shouldn't have been turned to stone.
Mm.
And you know, perhaps we can imagine a time, you know, after this story finishes where they return them to their living flesh selves and they can talk it out.
Mm.
Yeah. Barbie and the second Diamond Castle.
Yeah.
Barbie and the Crystal Castle.
Well, yeah, it's gonna have a really great soundtrack.
Barbie and the Battle of the Bands
Yeah.
returns, reunites.
One interesting thing about Slider was, I think it's the flashback of Melanie going into the mirror, but Lydia takes over and Melody immediately says, "Oh no, it's Slider, he's chasing me!" Which I think means that Slider was around when Lydia was still, like, good, and that just seems interesting to me. Like, was our goth muse, like, riding around on a dragon while the other two had Pegasi?
Yeah,
Oh.
I think Lydia went into the green cave
Oh,
and got her
right.
evil flute
Right,
before
she did go
she
in...
turned them into stone, and
Right.
yeah, so maybe she got him there.
Right, but then still, how does Melody know, oh, that's Slider, and not, oh no, it's a dragon?
Oh, good point.
And, you know, maybe they just were writing that bit and didn't really think about that, but
Hmm.
that she had maybe seen this dragon before.
Maybe he got invited to game night sometime.
Yeah, the muses, their life before being turned to stone isn't very apparent.
Yeah,
Just kind of sitting around in a castle playing music.
right. Once again, it's not really their story.
Yeah.
They're just there to be the people that our heroes rescue.
So yeah, next up, our next characters are the puppies.
Gosh.
Lily and Sparkles.
I thought they were kind of horrifying.
Thank you.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
did too. I hated looking at them.
Yeah.
Right, the animation was something.
Yeah. The fact that they stand upright and dance.
Yeah. I don't know who decided that was a good idea, but I kind of appreciate how wholeheartedly they went for it.
Yeah.
Like, it was not just one scene, it was many times.
And the outtakes are all them dancing.
Yeah, that too.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something where, like, dancing in animated movies, that's something where you can just, like, copy and paste it to multiple characters, and then you don't have to animate each individual character. But it's odd when it's two puppies that are dancing like people.
Mm-hmm.
And not even necessarily dances that fit the songs they're dancing to.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Just dancing.
Yeah. It was definitely felt like it was just for like a humor element of like, oh, people will think it's funny if these puppies are doing human dance moves.
Yeah.
So let's throw that in there.
They actually apparently became somewhat of a meme.
Oh boy.
Like,
In
like,
what way?
back in
just like-
2008?
No,
Or,
like recently, like gifs of them just dancing.
Oh.
Which, yeah, it's horrifying enough that you don't need much context to be like, oh!
Like before the movie started and it was at that like main menu and like they had the ghost, you know, images of characters and the puppies kept showing up and I was like, oh god. Because it's gonna be in that movie. Oh no.
Yeah, unlike a lot of the other horrific animals from these Barbie movies, they are in the movie quite a lot. Like the dolphin in Mermaidia and the turtle in Mermaidia, they will steal your soul, but they're only in like a combined 10 minutes of the movie. Here it's like they keep cutting back. It's like Bibble with his weird teeth.
So I feel like because of that, like, creepy animation aside, like the puppies do play a pretty important role throughout the movie, and like they come to the rescue of Alexa and Liana like multiple times, and they, are really like smart and helpful and important.
Mhm.
So I wish that they had the creators had put more effort into making their animation not creepy because of how much they show up.
Well, maybe they thought it was cute.
I
Maybe they
don't
didn't
see
think it
how
was
that would
creepy.
be possible.
I don't know.
Yeah, animation was not what it is now.
The reason is that they were toys. They
What?
were designed for the toys
Yes,
with the big
because
eyes.
that's the thing. They're
Oh.
like when they're not actively dancing like people, they move like toys. Like I don't know. Our grandparents' house had this little like robotic puppy that like walked and then you could like it would do a flip. Like you could
I know what you're talking
like
about.
load it up like a spring or something and it would flip. Like it moved like that kind of toy.
Yeah, it is almost certainly they designed the toy, and then the puppy in the movie designs came after.
That's so interesting.
And that's how it's been with a lot of the animal designs here. They start from the toy and then go horrifically backwards. Other characters, we have the troll. He only has one scene.
Mm-hmm.
The tavern keeper.
I think I gotta say, I think his name was Edgar. Am I remembering
Yes,
correctly?
yes.
He's got to be my favorite side character. I can't exactly tell you why, but just like his entrance and like his exasperation at these darn musicians who haven't shown up for their gig. Like he stole a little bit of my heart in that moment. So yeah.
And that leads into the scene which we forgot to mention of someone throwing their mashed potatoes up against the wall. Like from VeggieTales, the pirates who don't do anything. I noticed that connection when I was rewatching it, and I wasn't sure if that was intentional, but not many other supporting characters. There's like the servants and the manor, but they don't really. Yeah.
I don't know if do these even count as characters, but like the weird children at the castle. I don't know why I was so weirded out by them, but they just really made me feel unsettled.
Oh.
Like the
I'm not sure
animation.
why you were so weirded
Just
out by them either.
I don't know. They all look the same. They have different colors, hair, and dresses and whatever, but they're like clones, and they're like all like children. And I don't know. It just like weirded me out that because it's like are they also immortal beings, or are they like trapped? And they all have ponies. I don't know. Just the whole thing just kind of weirded me out a little bit. So
That is almost like the reason they're clones is because they were copy and pasted from each other to save money on animation. The reason they have ponies, I think that might be Magic of Pegasus. They have the three little girls have little Magic Pegasus, and they actually paint the sky for sunset and sunrise.
is this like the same universe, you think?
I don't think so, but the muses of music would make sense in Magic of Pegasus because that's also inspired a little bit by Greek mythology. So overall, I gave the characters a 4 out of 5. Again, Liana and Alexa, I find very interesting in their relationship. I found very compelling. So that kind of brings up the score a little bit, where I don't think any of the supporting characters grabbed me in the same way. But I want to give it points for what they did with Liana and Alexa.
I gave a 3.5 again, and I think like I don't know, I didn't find any of the characters like particularly compelling, but I did, they were some really fun details. So
I gave a 3, and I don't know that I've got a super great explanation for that.
I gave the characters a 2.5. I don't feel like there were any that I was that interested in or that I saw a lot of change in throughout.
Yeah, I think that's fair. For me, comparing this to a lot of the other Barbie movies, I felt this was pretty strong, which, again, these are straight to DVD Barbie movies, so. So yeah, next up we have animation.
I think I was maybe more so. I feel like the quality of animation just overall is probably pretty on par with the rest of the Barbie movies, right?
Yes.
Which is not great. So kind of leads to some creepy moments like the puppies or I don't know, just like certain things, motion, movements of skirts or clothing just does not look realistic, whatever. But like that's to be expected. But I guess I more was making some notes on like some of the design aspects that I really enjoyed. So just like their cottage is so cute. The design of that, like I want to live there. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, it inspired an entire like
Aesthetic.
cultural movement. So
Yeah. And kind of related to that, just I think the flowers throughout the movie were quite, like, it seemed like some attention was put into those. Both at their cottage, there were a lot of nice flowers and foliage, and when they're in, like, that flower field, I thought that was really beautiful. And then at the very end, there's, like, these really nice kind of time-lapse flowers reemerging from the ground and blooming that, I don't know, it was some nice animation there. Yeah, I guess the only other note I had was I really also liked the design of Lydia's flute a lot, which it's like these two snakes. I mean, just like the design of that, I don't know how to describe it. It's like double-barreled flute with like snake mouths and stuff. So, yeah, it's pretty cool.
I gotta say, I was a bit disappointed with the animation here. Compared to all of these Barbie movies have been sort of on a curve, getting better and better with animation, and this feels like the curve is starting to maybe stall a bit. And I wonder if, because as these movies are going on, I think they're making a little bit less money for Mattel, and so I wonder if they're maybe starting to cut the budget a little bit. Because there are moments and character designs that really work, and then there are just moments and character designs that don't work. And like a lot of the backgrounds feel emptier than they have in other movies. Flatter, the ground is flatter. Um, I think Alexa and Liana, the designs, they're new models, more stylized than we've ever seen before, and I think it works really well at sort of making them look better than Barbie has in any of these other movies, but the rest of the animation just wasn't quite up to par for me. I think especially the dogs.
We're just gonna keep coming back to
Yeah.
that.
We've talked about it enough, but yeah, it's I don't know. I've already seen the next movie, and I think the next movie is more in line with the other Barbie movies in terms of improvement. So I feel like there's some kind of factor in here that's maybe hampering them a little bit with the animation. But I'm kind of worried that the sort of exponential growth we've been seeing in the animation quality is going to start kind of petering out here. So, yeah, I was a little bit disappointed.
I feel like the only thing I have to add regarding animation is that I thought the horses had really interesting faces, almost as if they had drag queen makeup on.
I totally missed that.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, but other than that, I feel like I agree with what everybody has said so far. So.
Yeah, I don't think I have very much to add animation-wise. I appreciated you calling my attention to some of those design things because I realized, oh yeah, that was really nice. I did like that. I think the only thing that really struck me about the animation was that it reminded me of VeggieTales, probably because like I wasn't watching a whole lot of things as a small child, but the early animation that I was watching was VeggieTales, and this felt a little bit like that.
Yeah, and this is probably on a similar budget scale to the VeggieTales movies as well. So I don't know. I maybe went in with too high of expectations, but I gave it a 3.5 out of 5 overall. I love the design work as always. I think it's very well done, but
I give it a 3, and I think, yeah, there were some like really cool details that I appreciated, but I think what you said about having like really flat backgrounds, like I feel like that was, yeah, I was just kind of like bored with a lot of things too, so.
Yeah, and I gave a 3.5, and just kind of for the reasons I already stated of like it's not great quality animation, but there were some nice details that I appreciated.
Yeah. I gave it a 3. I feel like it's not great, but it's okay for the time and budget level that it was.
Yeah. Next up, we have the voice acting. We once again have Kelly Sheridan as Barbie. We're getting near the end of her initial tenure as Barbie, but she still has a few
Can she
more
come
movies
back
left.
later?
Yeah, there's drama that I'm gonna have to
Oh,
bring
cool.
up on the episodes where it's relevant. But yeah, she's playing Barbie the way she's played Barbie before. It's almost like a TV show at this point where she's playing the same character over and over again, and you kind of just there's a comfort in it, but also it's very difficult to rate her individual performances.
That's kind of how it always is.
Yeah.
But
I don't know.
she's not the one who sings, right?
No, that's actually Melissa Lyons who does the singing voice, and she's done the singing voice for all of these Barbie movies so far for Kelly Sheridan.
I had a lot of notes on voice acting.
Go for it.
Well, I guess maybe the only actor that I really would like to know is the one who plays Slider, because I thought that voice acting was just really fun and intriguing, and I thought they had a great laugh. So
This is Mark Atchison as Slider.
Cool.
I think this is his first Barbie movie.
All right.
A lot of these are returning cast members. They use Canadian voice actors mainly, and so it's a lot of the same rotating cast. They do a lot of other voice acting work. My Little Pony has a lot of the same voice actors, so
Yeah, I just feel like, so along with Slider, like I feel like Lydia had an interesting voice too, and I'm like, as I was watching it, I was reflecting on like the fact that most quote unquote evil characters, I feel like end up having much more interesting voice acting aspects to them than, the protagonists. Especially you think about like Barbie and Alexa's voice actors. They, I don't know, it's just like a classic like white lady
yeah.
accent. I don't know. And yeah, just not a very interesting nothing interesting going on there. But like Lydia and Slider had like really interesting voices, and yeah, I just think there's so much more fun to be had there. And I think that's the case not just with Barbie movies, but with things all around. I also love hearing animals that are obviously voiced by human actors. Just like thinking about that in the studio, like people just like yipping into the microphone and like yeah, I think it's funny. But the other things that I had to say about voice acting were the accents, because I feel like, so they all live in the same like village, right? But there are people who randomly have British accents, and it's not really like there's
Maybe
no
they came
rhyme or
from farther
reason.
away.
That's true. Yeah, I guess. But I just think it's funny that things like that happen, and it doesn't really make any sense. Also, I didn't love that. Oh, I don't know. The fact that the troll in the movie had an Irish accent was just like, huh. It's kind of just, use one Irish accent. That's where you put it. So.
Yeah. So Lydia, who you mentioned, is played by Kathleen Barr, and she's in a lot of these movies, but most relevant to this role is she was actually Laverna in the Fairytopia movies, the villain there
okay.
as well. And she does her own singing for this movie.
Nice.
The troll is played by Scott McNeil, which makes me wonder, based on that name, if he might actually be Irish. But so Scott McNeil is actually an Australian-born Canadian actor.
Wow.
Oh boy.
So not Irish unless he's Irish by heritage. Jeremy and Ian are actually two different voice actors. Jeremy is played by Jeremy Frum, and Ian is played by Noel Johnson.
I'm so
Or
sad.
Johansson.
They weren't
Wow.
actually Jeremy and Ian.
Man, why would they get two different voice actors if they created this character as a pair of twins? That there's plenty of other times when you have a pair of twins that you just have one actor play both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And their voices are similar enough that it's.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah, that is odd. Before, even in the Barbie movies, when they had twins, it's usually the same actor. So
How often have they had twins?
Well, the
They're-
Princess and the Pauper, are they twins?
no,
No?
but they are both played by Kelly Sheridan.
Okay.
Whereas in 12 Dancing Princesses, they have twins, and the twins are played by the same voice actress, which then leads to a bit of trouble when they finish each other's lines. And so it sounds like one person just had an awkward pause in the middle of their sentence.
Oh, no.
So maybe that's why they got two different
Mm.
actors for the twin characters here.
Mm.
Could be.
Yeah, I think it was solid work all around for the voice acting. Accents were better than they usually are.
Oh.
There's been some really sketchy accents in these movies. I especially loved Cassidy Ladon as Liana,
Hmm.
or as Alexa. Alexa, yes.
Okay.
Mm.
I don't know. She just made that character more interesting with her voice.
Hmm.
Mm.
I don't know if I can pinpoint a specific thing, but
Mm.
yeah. And Kelly Sheridan, to be fair, she gets more to do with this performance than she usually gets.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's just kind of like come in and read the lines, whereas here there's more of a character.
Yeah, I don't really have any notes on the voice acting, which might like just kind of be a good thing in itself because basically my take was like I thought everyone did a good job and it was not something that I really noticed much.
I would agree with that. I don't think I have anything more to say.
Yeah. Overall, I gave the voice acting a 4.5 out of 5. I think it was solid all around in a way that I think some of these movies haven't always been.
I gave it a 3.5 apparently, but I feel like I should bump up the score to like a 4.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can do that.
because I don't know. I did really appreciate some of the voice acting.
I also gave it a 4 because yeah, I think everyone just did a pretty solid job.
I gave it a 3.5. I feel like everyone did it quite well, but um, Barbie in particular, I think always just sounds a little bit fake to me, and that might just be a personal preference, but I wasn't a huge fan of that.
Mm.
Yeah, I was noticing rewatching it. I think certain line readings were maybe a bit off, but it's very much Kelly Sheridan has developed the Barbie voice, so she kind of sticks with it here. Yeah, last up we have music, which it's worth noting first that the musical moments in the movie are all diegetic. All of the
Hmm.
songs are happening both within the story of the movie and what we see.
Right.
There's some score.
Well, yeah, but
Yeah.
the song, like the sung parts, are all diegetic,
Sure. Yeah.
which I don't think any of the other Barbie movies have. Any of the Barbie musicals have had that,
Hmm.
Hmm.
which I thought it was interesting.
Hmm.
I had a very weird experience with the music in this movie because I had never seen this movie, but I knew I recognized basically all of the songs. And so I'm trying to figure out how on earth I know these songs, whether I heard them at a friend's house as a young child or where I heard them that I know all these songs.
Just came to you in dreams.
And I wouldn't be surprised if my sister heard them somewhere and then just sang them around the house often enough until I knew them without knowing where they came from. That's probably pretty likely, but I knew them all without having seen this movie.
Mm.
They are good songs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I like. I think my favorite is Two Voices, One Song.
Mm-hmm. Me too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the. It's also just like a good. It's about Liana and Alexa, which
Mm.
that I think throughout that has been my favorite part of every aspect of this movie. So
Hmm.
that it's their song kind of gives it some significance.
Mm. Yeah, I also like the instrumentation on that one of like how it usually had kind of the just more stripped down guitar of like them playing their guitars together and singing. So I enjoyed that. And just kind of throughout on that song in particular, and then throughout the rest of the movie, all the harmonization on the songs I really
Hmm.
liked and thought that was nice.
Other songs we have Connected, which is
Hmm.
based on a Mexican song from the pop group RBD, which is Tenerte y Quererte. So this is the English translation, well, sort of translation of the song. Yeah,
Hmm.
I remembered liking it more when I saw this before. I think Two Voices, One Song maybe grew in my estimation and
Mm-hmm.
Connected maybe shrunk a little bit. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
that's fair to say, but
So the song Connected, the original, that was not made for this movie,
no, that
right?
was not made for the
And
movie.
do you know how it came to be part of this movie?
I don't know. It must have just been the license was the right price. It's I think it's a good song, but it didn't stick out to me as much this time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Then we also have Believe. That's
Which
the
one
Is that the
was
one
that,
they
it?
that
sing in the bar?
that's the one that
No.
Melody.
Teaches them and then
Oh,
they
the
Teaches
key
use
them.
to
song.
unlock the
Mm-hmm.
Diamond
Yep.
Castle.
Mm-hmm.
That one's maybe the one that repeats the most, and I don't know that I like it enough to
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
really.
Yeah. For a lot of the other songs, I was expecting to get to the end and ask you all, where do I know these songs from? And to have somebody say, oh, it's, by such and such artist and you've heard it on this whatever. And that one felt like, oh, yeah, I think this one was written for this movie. And apparently, with the exception of Connected, they were all written for this movie. But
Yeah,
that
from
one
what I can
especially
find.
felt like it.
Yeah, the one they sing in the tavern is "We're Gonna Find It,"
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
which
impressive if they like improvs that,
I
you
yeah,
know,
know.
like they,
Yeah.
yeah, to be able to like ad lib a song together in
Mm-hmm.
time,
Yeah.
pretty impressive.
Yeah.
and that is maybe the most non-diegetic part of the music is that characters catch on very quickly to the songs and know
Mm,
parts
Yeah.
of the songs that haven't been sung yet, and
mm-hmm,
Right. They can also play any instrument that they pick up, it seems.
mm-hmm,
yeah,
mm-hmm. Which, yeah, I mean, goes back to my first point of like how what are they doing in the woods? They have never been out of the village, and yet they are all so talented.
yeah.
That's the magic of living in this kingdom, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah, I thought the music, and part of this has been every time one of these Barbie movies is a musical, I give it extra points.
Mm.
Mm,
Because the way musicals work is you're able to expedite characterization
mm-hmm,
and expedite sort of explaining motivations. So I just think it works so well with these Barbie movies, the sort of fusion of the musical genre and the animation.
mm-hmm,
Um, so I always give them extra points for that. And yeah, the score itself is also pretty good. Arnie
mm-hmm.
Roth is a good sort of conductor, and I don't know if he composed anything for this. Usually he's drawing from classical pieces, but I think
Mm-hmm.
he might have done some original.
Yeah, I noticed that there were a few scenes where it wasn't just like, your normal score of like classical music, princess, da da da, but there was like some score that had like some shoegazy guitar in it, and like it was interesting. It was cool.
You're gonna talk about the
I
blues?
do want to gush about the blues guitar that we do see in this movie because I did not expect it at all, and it absolutely delighted me. I love blues music, and the fact that they got to like lean into that was really cool. So,
Yeah,
hmm I think I similarly enjoyed too, like the random electric guitar
yes!
stuff that
Yes.
came in at the end. Oh man, yeah. There were some kind of unexpected musical moments throughout that were a lot of fun.
yeah. I gave it a 5 out of 5. Again, maybe the music doesn't quite deserve it, but I just love any time these movies are musicals. So
Mm.
I always give it extra points.
I give it a 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say.
Yep, I also gave 4.5 out of 5. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Thought
hmm
it was nice stuff.
I gave it a 4 out of 5. Um, I thought the music was fine, not necessarily great, but I know a bunch of these songs, so they must be doing something right. I'm impressed that we could talk about this Barbie movie for this long. And I realize you do this pretty regularly, given that you have a podcast about it. But
Yes, this
I'm
episode
more
is gonna,
impressed than I was before.
yeah, this episode is going to be one of our longer ones, which I think this movie kind of warrants it just by its reputation alone.
And there's 3 guests,
Yeah.
like more
Yep.
people talking.
Twice as many people on this
Yep.
as you often do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it also goes to show that just like you can find like a lot of hidden and interesting things throughout these movies that can bring up some interesting discussions. So
Yeah, and I really appreciate all of the insights you brought into the conversation as well. I think you did a good job filling John's shoes for this episode, though.
Yeah.
We're looking
Thank
forward
you.
to having him back next episode
Yeah, it
as
was
well.
a shame he wasn't
Yes.
here.
yeah.
And yeah, speaking of John, we're actually going to cut over to him for his thoughts on this movie just a second here.
Hey guys, sorry I couldn't make it to the episode today. I got caught up at work, things got busy, but I'm here now to give you my thoughts of this film. Overall, I didn't really like this film. I wasn't invested in any of the story or characters. I didn't really love any of this. Overall, it felt like a waste of my time. I just kept waiting for this to end, which is a shame. It's one of the last films by our apparently our main writing team that had done some really phenomenal work, and just seeing that this is their final Barbie film, it's a shame because this is my least favorite of their work. Starting with the story, there was just too many moments that were filler. The songs were part of the story, I guess. They're part of the characters' worlds. They sung in universe, in real life, to those characters. But those numbers went on for far too long, and I just felt like they were there to fill time. Sure, they were there to give us a nice, catchy song, I guess, but it spent too much time on them. There was just too much time spent on nothing. Things were solved super easily. Near the end, our villain, who is something, I don't know, she gets thrown into water and I guess melts or something very easily. Why? We don't have no idea. But then they finally dam the castle, and the whole scene was going so slowly. I was like expecting there to be some kind of plot twist, and there was a plot twist. The villain's back, and then she gets turned to stone, like the elements of harmony from My Little Pony, because friendship and music and love and whatnot. There's a point in the story where I think I really gave up in this film was really when our characters broke up with each other. It's a cliche. Any friendship movie just has to have the characters break up. I felt that this was forced. I didn't really buy it. I know that Jay felt that he could understand the breakup just on the character traits, and I can understand where he's coming from. But where I say that this is forced is because the moments that Alexa, funny name, was just struggling about, we never saw that struggle visually on her. They always went by that scene very quickly. And of course, like, Barbie was the one that took the focus of the story. And so Alexa, during those moments where she apparently wanted to be done with it, I didn't see any struggle in her face. I didn't see any struggle in her lines. And so when their fight happens, it just felt really forced. To the point where she throws away her stone. Why? I have no idea. Forced friendship breakups. Why? Because the story needs them to break up so the villain can lead us into whatever third act we got going. Like I said, I really felt that there was a lot of waste of time. The story just wasn't developed. There was a lot of filler. There was a lot of unnecessary moments. And the clarity wasn't very strong. Like, why was it? What was at stake? Music? I don't know. Why does the villain Lydia do what she do? I don't know. It just happens. And so for this, I gave the story a 2.8 out of 5. This is probably my second lowest story rating. It's right under Fairytopia. I have a lot of problems with Fairytopia, but I felt like there was a slightly stronger story in Fairytopia, which is shocking. But sadly, that's what I found here. Moving on to the characters, of course we're introducing Barbie's new best friend, Alexa, and well, the other character. Here we have Liana and Alexa. Barbie being Liana and Alexa being the other one. I don't know what her name is. But they're friends. I thought they were fine. They were fine. I mean, they worked together. I did enjoy their chemistry, but besides that, I didn't really care too much about them. They were just our typical Barbie characters that we've seen so many times. They're repeated. Melody, she's forgettable. We have the twins who are just the exact same. They're in the story for too long. They had nothing to offer. I don't know why. Lydia, she's just another villain. She's another Laverna, but weaker. She's also voiced by Kathleen Barr, which is not a choice that should have been made because Kathleen Barr has been the villain 3 times now. This is being her 4th time. Slider was fine. There's only one reason I like him, which I'll talk about in the voice acting section. The puppies had no right being in this film. They just added nothing. All the animal characters in these recent films have been adding nothing. They're just there to I guess, move the plot along to the next scenery station. And just do it because, hey, I'm going to run this way now. So our main characters have to follow them. They don't really have a point. They have this weird animation moment where they dance on their 2 legs. And it's disgusting. They don't look good. They're dancing. I don't get the appeal. So with characters, I gave the characters a 3 out of 5. They're not as developed as they could be. There's not that many strong, noticeable character. Moving on to animation, I thought it was a bit underwhelming. The backdrops, the scenery was just bland. There wasn't that many interesting locations except for the Diamond Castle, which is the big set piece. But it's only in the film for like 2 minutes. And yeah, that's a shame. There's not much else to say about the animation. I already mentioned the puppies dancing. Yeah, it's just not that great. It's really disappointing. So I gave it a 3 out of 5. Going to voice acting. The voice acting, as usual, is pretty fine. It's solid. These actors know what they're doing. They gave the same performances as we get typically, and it's good. The one actor I wanted to point out, and it was the voice for Slider. He was voiced by Mark Atkinson, who he's another Pony alumni, but he's the voice of Lord T-Rex, a big villain in the show of My Little Pony, and it was very interesting to see him here being a more comedic character than his very different character that we got in the show. Yeah, as typical, voice acting, 3.5, solid, as normal. Music, music. This is a pseudo-musical. It's not a typical musical. It uses, 2000s style music of just playing guitar. I didn't really love it. It's modern music playing at an older time period, which doesn't fit. I didn't like that aspect. And plus, the music was just there. I get that it was the characters, it's part of their character. But the music didn't really add anything to the story. They just sung to sing. And then the songs just didn't really reflect anything new. It just repeated the exact same thing we just saw. And in some cases, they sung songs that I don't know how they knew. That just weren't really mentioned well in the script. If you took the music away and just listened to it by itself, it's fine, I guess. I guess I could learn to enjoy enjoy the music, but like in the context of this film and the story, it's just there. It's a waste of time. I get that music is a theme, but it just didn't do anything. It was there. The only noticeable piece of music that I found was just when at the end, when they're in the Diamond Castle, there's this nice bit of what I assume is a bit of classical music playing to be the theme of the Diamond Castle. And I thought that was really nice. That was very typical of Ani Roth. And so, yeah, the music I gave a 3.5. Again, that's a pretty average rating that we get for music. It's not any higher because it's a musical. It's not any lower. It just stays the same. I don't really care about the music. So yeah, 3.5. Which leaves me a total score of 15.8, making this the second lowest Barbie film. Just below Fairytopia and just above Barbie Diaries. I am the lowest rating for this film just by looking at everybody else's scores. So I guess that's that. Thank you guys. I will join you guys next week.
So, overall, I gave it a 21.5 out of 5, which is a 4.3 on the 5-star rating scale. It's up there for my rankings. I'll have to look exactly where it lands, but it wasn't as high as I was expecting it to be. Coming into this podcast, this was the one that I remembered being my favorite, and I think rewatching it in the context of all of these other movies, it maybe I had too high of expectations going in, but it is still a movie I find very interesting.
Emma and I had the same score. 18.5 out of total score and 3.7 out of 5 as the 5-star rating. And I feel like that makes sense. I don't know. I feel like that's actually a little bit higher than I was expecting. And I think perhaps, I don't know, like I really enjoyed it. I do remember like watching the movie and there were some parts where I was like, I am kind of bored. But like thinking about it now, all the different aspects, there were some fun aspects. So.
Yeah, so I also have a total of 18.5 points, an average of 3.7 out of 5. And yeah, I think I just like overall feel like it's a good movie, pretty interesting story, good music. And I also do appreciate the whether intentional or not. The gay subtext throughout is, gotta give some extra points for that too. So
I gave it a total score of 17 with a 5-star rating of 3.4. I think I liked it more than I was expecting to for this movie.
all right.
For this
Okay.
movie.
I don't know, for a Barbie movie, I haven't seen that many. I didn't think I was missing that much. But this one seemed pretty good.
So overall, our final average score is an 18.2 out of 25, which is a 3.6 on the 5-point scale, and that puts us kind of in the bottom half of our overall rankings here between 12 Dancing Princesses and Magic of the Rainbow, which is kind of interesting. I was expecting it to be a bit higher, but I can see, given the issues brought up, why it maybe falls a little bit lower in our rankings. But yeah, that brings us to a close. Though before we go, I wanted to quickly shout out Emma is on here, both because I thought her insights would be great and because you've actually done the artwork that we are debuting with this episode.
Woohoo.
The
Yay!
official
Yay,
Binging
Emma.
Barbie artwork. So I just wanted to thank you in person for designing it, and looks wonderful. I am very excited for all of our audience to see it. You should check out our Instagram if you haven't seen it yet, and it'll be posted everywhere that we have social media presence. So
Thank you for entrusting me with your podcast.
yeah, of course, you are a very talented graphic designer, and
Oh,
I really appreciate that you did our artwork.
oh, shucks.
Thank you everyone for listening. Make sure to follow us on social media. We are Binging Barbie Podcast on Instagram, at Binging Barbie on Twitter, and Binging Barbie, a Barbie movie podcast on Letterboxd. There you can find an up-to-date list of all of our Barbie movie rankings. Join us next week for a very special Barbie movie, her first Christmas movie, Barbie in A Christmas Carol. Thanks everyone for listening.